First of all, good morning, everybody. Hello. It's awesome to see everybody, and welcome. We're not going to do anything today that gets you out of this chair, except mentally. We're no trust exercises. Nobody has to climb a ladder and jump into somebody's arms. It's okay. Just relax. Yeah, well, we're ready. No, just to say, let's spend time together. Please, I'm going to propose a bunch of things to you, of course, but you also the other way, right? Dialogue is always better than monologue, right? Which you know from your jobs. And I would just say, to begin with, of course, if you're in charge of anything, nobody ever says anything honestly to you, ever. Yeah, that's true. So step one is when we're talking about listening, and you're in an opera house, so this is about listening. The hardest thing is not listening to what people say, because they never say anything, but listening to what they're not saying is the actual listening. Is listen to everything not being said, that nobody dares to say, nobody dares to think. Most people don't understand how they're feeling at all. Most people feel nobody ever heard them, ever. But most people, nobody ever heard them because they never felt they could speak. So it's this really deep, deep, deep series of layers we have to always go through. Most people don't believe in themselves. They're ashamed of themselves in so many ways. So what they spend most of their time doing is hiding, covering everything. When I work with an actress, I worked with one very, very great actress, one of the great American actresses. In the first rehearsal, she said, "Okay, what's she covering? What is this woman covering?" Because we start most of our lives with creating the cover for what we're really feeling, what we really care about, all the real things in our life. And it's the same as beauty. Beauty is, by definition, hidden. Nothing's on the surface. Whatever's on the surface is not real. Nobody is who they look like. Everybody has some whole other set of lives that they're hiding all the time. And so for me, it's a lot of the work is getting to know people in other ways. Getting to know who you're in the room with, but also who they brought in the room with them, right? Because all of us have many lifetimes. We've been here many times before. We keep coming back. And your previous lifetimes are really important with who you are now. As you know, many things in this world you understand and nobody told you about it. You have knowledge that nobody ever taught you. It's knowledge you have from a previous lifetime. And you came into this world with some things you're really connected to in amazing, surprising ways. My mother lived in Japan for a long time, and one of her close friends was a woman who specialized in ikebana, which is the Japanese art of flower arrangement, where with 3 flowers, you can describe the entire universe. And it's this incredible art form. And this woman is in charge of one of the greatest schools of ikebana, going back 700 years. When she visited Cairo, she suddenly said, "I was Egyptian in a previous life. I know it. I suddenly understand, I feel everything here." She now lives half the year in Cairo, half the year in Japan. She started an ikebana school in Cairo. But you know, there are all these things, just the music that you like already tells you something that you knew before this life. There are so many lives. All I want to say is, one of my really great friends, the Mexican artist, Guillermo Gomez Peña, when he's sitting in a cafe in Mexico City, writing in his notebook, he has to thank 20 generations of campesino workers in the field who were in the field before dawn were working in the field after dark their whole lifetimes. So he can sip a cappuccino and write in his notebook. We all carry with us all the people who made sacrifices so we could be here. And everything we're doing is everything they were not able to do. And we had to be born so that something could move forward that could not move forward in their lifetime. And so we always have to think of the people for whom we're here, how we got here, what we're here on earth to do now that needs to be done, that they're waiting to be done. It's something that people have been waiting centuries for us to do what we're doing now. And so for me, it's always important every morning to be in contact with the people who are waiting for me to be here. And what do they need me to do right now? And that's how I feel a lot with, of course, working with the people we're working with. The rule every day is, will this help? You know, because no two people are the same. There's no formula. Every time I work with an actress, I have to start over again. And the way you listen and what you offer is based on who this person really is, which they're covering from you. Because most people don't want to be judged. Nobody wants to be judged. And one of the problems with being in charge is that you're in charge of evaluating. So one of the things I do is remove evaluation from my work completely. Because judging is very, very, very limited. Most of us, if you think back of the important experiences in your lives, frequently it's a crisis in your family where something was a disaster and it was horrible, but you look back across years and it was an important time. So all I mean to say is, for example, when I was young, I saw a production by a great French theater director when I was 18, and I hated every moment of it. And I'm not like this, but I wanted my money back. I was so upset. 5 years later, I realized it was one of the most important things I ever saw. 40 years later, today, I can describe everything that happened for 3 hours because it became one of the most important experiences of my life. But when I was having that experience, I hated it, I rejected it, I pushed it away. For me, that's why evaluation is always tricky, because mostly you're wrong. Mostly something much deeper was happening that nobody knew at the time. And your evaluation is based on something so superficial. And in fact, something much deeper is happening. And for me, in my work, what I cherish and treasure are the crises. If you're doing a project and there's no crisis, you're wasting everybody's time. It's only when you go to the crisis point that something gets real. We stop lying to each other, we stop having half-truths, we stop pretending, we stop, all that thing. And what does it mean to really make, with the people you're working with, deep friendship? Because if you just don't really know somebody, you have to be polite. And being polite means never being real. And only a friend can tell you something that nobody else dares to tell you. A really good friend. In a lot of my early shows, we got a lot of costumes. We used to go through the magazine's social pages. And I worked with a very great Czech costume designer. And she always would say, she would point to a picture, and she would say, "This person has no best friend." Nobody said, "You don't look so good in that." What it is to have a best friend is the most important thing. Because what are we doing in life? Just running around? No. We're making lifetime friendships. And every person in the project, you want to know them forever. And so the way you work with them is a way that creates this lifelong connection, where we're not finished with this project, where people are offering things that are so precious. And in my work, that's very important, because every human being is a miracle. Do they feel that way? No. But are they? Yes. And our work is just to find the miracle and let them find the miracle and know that and feel that. And not to be judged, but to be incredible. And so a lot of my work is in this time of limitation, of environmental crisis and budget cuts. A lot of my work is about the immeasurables. What the Buddhists call the immeasurables is what cannot be measured. We're so busy with our systems measuring everything. Right? Measuring, evaluating, measuring. And we live in a period which values scientific knowledge more than anything else. And scientific knowledge are things you can measure. But in fact, life cannot be measured. The most important things in life have no measurement. For example, how much does your grandmother love you? Is there a number? No. The most important things in life, there are no numbers for any of the most important things in life. And if you're living life by the numbers, you're not living. Because life has no numbers. And our numbers are very temporal, and our numbers are always going to be wrong because they have to change. So whatever number you had is a different number tomorrow. So the number is, and change is really important. And we keep wanting to set something. We have our number so it doesn't have to change. But in fact, the whole world is telling you to change. We're all in these structures that no longer work. In fact, change is the point. So let's not hold on to these things that we feel won't change, at least. That's stable. Nothing is stable. Thank God. Never was ever. But we now, because the world is so extreme, we have to live like somebody lived in the 13th century. You don't know what tomorrow is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, at last. And so how to live in this open way that is perpetually open and that is always inviting change rather than resisting it, and creating a dynamic rather than a fixed relationship. So the dynamic is always able to change, always able to shift, always in motion, which is why, for example, in most cultures in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, history is not in books. We think, oh, we wrote the book and that's history. And of course, in Indonesia, they would just laugh at you. In Indonesia, the only way they tell history is in dance, because dance is always moving and history is always moving. And your book about Guatemala from 20 years ago is so wrong. And every page has to be rewritten. Because as human beings, we fix something and it's wrong. It's a cover-up for some whole other set of things. Now the CIA has published their family jewels papers about all the coups in Guatemala, and Guatemalan history has to totally be rewritten because, of course, the real history was never the history on the surface, but always the history behind. And so always, even in our own family, it's not the story, it's the story behind the story that counts. And there are many stories behind the story. And that's what's real. The story that everybody tells themselves was invented so we didn't have to tell the real story. And that's in the newspaper, that's everywhere. That's not the story. That's the story we had to announce is the story, to cover up everything else. And I would just say, mostly what you're dealing with are areas of real extreme pain, embarrassment. You know, a lot of my life is dealing very directly with suicide, which right now is the real pandemic in the world of young people killing themselves at a rate unprecedented in human history. But again, why do we not talk about it? Because nobody dares talk about it. In the family, you can't bring it up. When a family that experienced it, you can't. It's a topic that is completely verboten. It is. So how do we go into these spaces that are forbidden together in a way that people feel protected and at the same time challenged? Which is why art was invented. Is somehow, I think of art as how you tell your father something your father doesn't want to hear. You know, thank you, Dad. You're 100% wrong, and your father thinks he's holding the whole family together, and of course it's a disaster. But how do you talk to him? With a lot of love, but strategically. You have to be strategic. And the arts are about a strategy that lets us go into places we're not allowed to go into. But in fact, that everybody's carrying with them every day. And that are the spaces that actually are in people's minds all the time. But nobody dares talk about it. Nobody dares express it. And so you get all this repressed emotion that you're dealing with every day, and that at this time in human history is now coming out in so much anger, you can't believe the anger we're living with every day. And in the Buddhist understanding of anger, right? 1 second of anger means you will spend 100,000 years in the realms of hell in future lives. Oh. But, you know, the hell obviously is not some place, it's right now. And you think of how many people are in hell every day, living with their anger that's eating them alive. How do you go in to that anger, move through that anger, and gradually let people let go of all these things they're holding that are killing them and killing the people around them? How do you move through this zone of anger, through the zone of refusal, through the zone of negativity, the zone of fear? Because obviously angry people are frightened, and they're covering the fear with the anger. The anger is never the issue. Again, the issue is something behind that issue, and behind that issue. And so you can never react to the surface, because the surface is already the cover. You have to ignore it completely. When somebody's behaving badly, you can't react, because that's covering some whole other thing. And they're happy for you to react to the anger because they want you to react to that, because there's really something else they don't want you to see. And so by not reacting to what you see, and then moving into everything you don't see. So one of the classes I teach at UCLA is called The Invisible World, because that's the real world. And that's a world of feelings, that's a world of memory. It's a world that we all carry with us and is the biggest world of all. It's the world of the people you don't see, the dead who are still with us, and the not yet born who are waiting, who we're all carrying with us. And that invisible world is the dynamic that we're all part of in this visible world. But obviously, I would just emphasize that if I invited you just to deal with just the simple part of the way our minds and memories work, just if I ask you to hold in your mind a snapshot of your mother, just have a picture of your mother in your mind. See her. See her, how she's looking at you. You took that snapshot at some time in your life when you and your mother had some important moment. And you can see that snapshot this morning, that image of her. But of course now, many things have happened since that time. So you see her in that snapshot differently now than you did on the day you took that picture in your mind. So that picture has already changed. That picture already has more information than you knew then. You see things you didn't see when you were with her that day. You now know other things. Every moment in your life is still alive. It keeps moving. Your memory is not fixed. It's not over with. Your memory moves forward. Every moment is still moving with you. The whole history of everything you experienced is still moving. And so everything is flowing. And it's really that flow, that life force, that lets us not be trapped in one moment in our lives. And so many people, as you know, are trapped in a moment in their life. What does it mean to let that moment open, flow, receive new air, receive new space? We are very spacious beings, but we are very, very, very claustrophobic, and we keep putting ourselves in small closed areas. And as you know from just your own kitchen, if you put any piece of food in a small dark place and seal it and don't open it, it will turn to poison. And your emotions are the same. If you seal it off and put it in some completely closed place, it turns to poison. And so many people are carrying this poison around with them. So a lot of our work is to invite people into spaces that open, that breathe, that allow people to release, to relax, to open. In the opera that we're doing here from 1693 by Charpentier, it's Medea. It's how angry can somebody get? How can a woman get angry enough to kill her own children? Because that's the violence we're living with. And that violence is very real. In fact, in this production, if you come see it, I don't have her kill her children. I have the children find poison and kill themselves because they don't want to be alive, which is our real tragedy in our lifetime. Is the generation of people that say, I don't want to be here now. And they're seeing their mother like this, they're seeing their father like that, and they say, we don't want to be here. For me, that's the actual what's happening. And where we have to really look differently, think differently, feel differently, and where just the extreme violence that we're living in is, excuse me, a message. Hello? That would be a message. Somebody's knocking on the door. Please open it. I have a friend, really inspired friend, who created a lot of the organic food movement in America. And she says, we only have to go through the doors that are open. And one of the people I worked with said, well, Peter only has to go through the doors that are closed. But it is this question, when the door is closed, who has the key? How do you find that key to unlock the prison that you are in, or that another human being is in? What's the key to unlock that door? So I started to talk about the immeasurables In Buddhism, the four immeasurables are generosity, because you can always be more generous, which you know if you're visiting somebody in a small African village where they have nothing, and you arrive and they give you everything, including what they were going to eat that night. Suddenly it's offered. Because the first step is generosity to being human. And whatever you have, give it. Anything you have, because anything we have was given to us. We earned nothing. It's because somebody saw us and were unbelievably generous that we are in the positions we're in. That life is the way we have whatever we have because somebody was generous to us, or many people. So generosity is the first thing of being alive, which is again the slight problem with artificial intelligence, because you could pretend to give something, but giving something is very real. And life is only, what have you given? That's the only question. So we start with generosity. Second thing is compassion, is just when we know that people are going through something difficult, which means just about everybody. How are you with them in their difficulty? Again, that's you being there for somebody else. The most important thing, compassion. Just seeing that everybody's struggling. Nobody knows how they're going to make it through the next 2 months. It's right now in the world, the struggle is so deep. People are struggling. How do you recognize the struggle, and what do you do to support them? And the third immeasurable, because again, we have all the compassion in the world. We're not going to run out of compassion. You have all the compassion you need, and you always will. The third immeasurable is courage. We have an infinite amount of courage, every one of us. We're not going to run out. It's not going to run dry. There's always more courage, and you can have more courage. And of course, the fourth one is love. And your bank account is very rich for love. And it will never be low. You can always find more love. You can always offer more love. You can always represent more love. And when you're with the immeasurables, the things that can't be measured, and the things that aren't limited, and the things that you won't run out of, life is very rich. Life is very rich. And you are not only empowered, you're able to really support other people when they are weak, and when they're frightened, and when they're worried. And you can be with people in a very beautiful and courageous and supportive way. And when we're in a time where most of the world is going in the wrong direction, what does it take to go in the opposite direction? Courage. But it always took courage. And most moments in history, most of the world was always going in the wrong direction. But if you look at all the people you admire in human history, they didn't choose the easy path. They chose a very difficult path, and they were not rewarded at all. They were rewarded with a lot of opposition, anger, and Mozart, when he died, thought he was a bad opera composer. And as you know, he was buried with the poorest people in the city of Vienna. He had no money, no social capital. That was Mozart. The real people went to their grave in a really terrifying way. But we're still living from their brilliant life energy. And in fact, they didn't die. Because the only thing that really dies is this body, but the real body, the actual body, our actual body is everything we did. All the things you did for everybody you know, those things will live on after you're gone. What you did here, that will live. So my line of work in culture is everything that's still living when the people who made it are gone. But in fact, they lived and died so that we have incredible things. And what are we offering forward is the question. And can we offer it in the spirit of not what do people want this morning, but if I'm able to do a Mozart opera and he wrote it 200 years ago and never lived to see it be done beautifully, what am I doing today for people 200 years from now? And what kind of depth charge am I planting that nobody can understand what it is now? But a later generation is going to say, thank God they did this. And right now, as you know, we're doing very large things to the planet that a later generation will not be thankful for. And we'll say, how could these people live on our credit cards and do these horrible things? And what does it mean to just rethink how we're living, not for today, but for our grandchildren's grandchildren? Which is, of course, the other side of the body that we have, right? Because you have your grandmother's eyes or ears or hairline or whatever. This body, we're borrowing it from our ancestors. And it will go forward in some other way. And if you want to see your grandmother again, it's in your granddaughter. You know, all of that. When Jesus said, I give you eternal life, it's real. It's totally real. Everything we're doing just keeps going. It doesn't stop. It keeps going. So it's just living with that sense of long-term forward, long-term backward. Realizing the past is not finished. The battle of the past is still being fought every day. None of those battles are over with. They keep going. Meanwhile, today is just trying to still deal with the past. And everything we did today is already the future. So you're living in this, as an artist, you have to live in the three times, as they say, the past, present, and future, every minute simultaneously. And you have to know that every gesture you make is already the future. But also everything you're fighting and dealing with and carrying is the past that is not finished. And we're entering it to move it forward in some beautiful way. In some really beautiful way. Because again, one of the things that there is in the world is beauty. And most people are so convinced everything is ugly all the time. Because that's what the newspaper is about, that's what the media is about, everything's about ugly, 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 ugly. And in fact, there's more beauty in every human being, in every leaf on every tree, in the quality of the sunlight right now. It's all incredible. It is a miracle. We're living with more beauty than we can even take in. And so part of my job as an artist is to insist on the beauty is real. And just ask people to step back and recognize the beauty for a moment. Yes, there are problems, but there's also more beauty than you can even begin to see. And just step back for a moment and open yourself. And the beauty is stronger than the fear at the end of the day. But right now we're in a period where the fear is like epidemic. And frightened people, of course, do stupid things. Because you don't see clearly when you're frightened. Fear means you're not looking, you're not thinking, you're not feeling. You're panicked. And that panic means people make huge mistakes. So how does it mean to breathe in an atmosphere that experiences beauty? Calms the fear, calms the anger, calms the panic. And has that moment of concentration because I think one of the things that all fascist governments understand is to break people's concentration and make people jump from thing to thing, which is why the internet is perfect, because you're always clicking on some new thing every second. Whereas any spiritual practice tells you that meditation, concentration, human power is about focus, which is why Vermeer would make a painting of a woman making lace, because that concentration has spiritual power. And when we're unconcentrated and our minds are jumping everywhere, we are powerless and we will buy anything they're selling us. We have no judgment. And we're just... So what is it to stop, focus, concentrate, create a quiet space of attention? Get past your first thought, get past your 50th thought, get past your 100th thought, and go deep. And you feel it. And you're carrying with you the power. You're carrying with you the beauty. You're carrying with you the solution. Because as you know from dealing with your employees, the only solution is the problem. Gang warfare will only be solved by gang members, never by cops. The solution has to be the people who are the problem. And until the people who are the problem are the solution, there will be no solution. So it's entirely about empowering the problem people to a place where there doesn't have to be a problem. And investing in the very worst people, quote unquote. Because all of us, every one of us is at our worst and at our best. We can do both things. All of us at our worst are horrible, and all of us at our best are amazing. And our job is to invite everybody in our circle to be at their best. So that's a little bit what I do. No, I'm... And again, let's talk, and I know you have a lot of things on your mind, so let's jump in. Because of course, a lot of my life is in very strange, different worlds. I do come into these opera houses every once in a while, but I also do work in the Congo or in Brazil or in South India or in a lot of places where people have no nice buildings like this, and where the work with people is very based on having nothing but humanity, which is rich. But also in situations where the government of the Congo could not be more genuinely evil, and how women feed their children every day in Eastern Congo, it's unbelievable. And so a lot of my work is in those kind of situations. A lot of my work is in situations where the political situation is a disaster, and the only way to turn the page of history is with culture. Mm-hmm. The only way to recognize that we have a lot is cultural. The only way to realize that all human beings are equal is cultural. That we can establish these things culturally in a way that the world doesn't show you in terms of justice, in terms of money, in terms of health care. The world is very unequal. And so creating The project is human equality. And so we can start demonstrating that culturally in very powerful ways, in very extreme conditions. And again, I would just say extreme conditions, I view extreme conditions as people who have no money and no way to feed their kids tonight, and people who have way too much money and have no idea how to live. And so we have these extremes, which is right now where the most extreme drug use is and the most extreme suicide, are very poor and very rich people. And so you have this strange extreme at this moment where more people are wealthy than were ever wealthy before in human history, and the wealth is obscene. And all these other people have no contact with something real to feed their children. And so we've invested in AI, which is to have virtual everything. And yes, the imagination is beautiful, but making and doing something for another person is the most important thing in your life. And that can't be virtual. That has to be for real. And I would just say, each of us for real knows that we're able to for real make a difference in the lives of a few people. And that's not AI. That's you becoming a human being in a way that lets other people become human. And that's the only way we are human, is offering something to other people from ourselves. And as soon as we're giving part of ourselves, we're no longer the same person, which is how we all grow. And I think that's the most beautiful thing is, as you know, when you search for who you are, who yourself, you're not a separate identity. You're all the people you ever knew. You're all the people who've changed your life in millions of ways, who offered you things. You're carrying with you everybody you ever knew. And they're blessing you over and over again. And your blessing has to go with everybody you meet. And they have to think of you somewhere at some point and be happy they know you. And that's the actual internet before the internet. That's how the whole world is connected and how we always were connected. And when you feel really good at a certain moment in the day, it's because somebody somewhere is thinking of you. And when you feel really bad at some point in the day, it's because somebody somewhere is thinking of you. That's the actual internet. And it really works, is we're all thinking of each other. And our moods and our sense of what we're capable of is dependent on what other people think of us and how we're thinking of them. And so we're all in this incredibly interconnected web of emotion, of history, of feeling. And that is the actual internet. And it was always here. To say for me in my life, as I mentioned, part of me is able to go in and out. I can do something in the Congo because I work at the Berlin Staatsoper. And they say in the Congo, oh, he works at the Berlin Staatsoper, which opens a door in the Congo. And at the same time, I can put something on the stage at the Berlin Staatsoper that this audience would never see in the world. And so for me, that's one of the most beautiful things about being an artist, but what I advise everybody is to be able to go in and go out. So in one day, in the morning, I can be in a corporate boardroom addressing the board of directors, and in the evening, I can be with gang members in East Los Angeles, right? And they're both gangs, but they actually don't know about each other, really. They never met. And one of the first steps is just to meet each other. Because we all are imagining people who we've never met. We've never spent time with these people. And in fact, the more you spend time with people, the more you get, oh my God, that's what it's like to live here. And that's what the choices people have to make every day are. And if those are the choices you're making, well, now we begin to understand why this and this and this are happening. That's just being with people. So as an artist, I'm able to be in lots of very different situations. And I just suggest to everybody, invent ways to be in very strange places. And then you find the strangest places where you think you live. But it's so important in the world we're in today, is to be in the middle.
I would be really very interested how you work with the actors, how you actually create that room without judgment, and what that makes
Right.
with those who you're working with. Because it just, we're thinking about school, about all this judgment in school. All the world is full of judgment. So how do you? I figure a room that you create here, and how do you do that? And how you bring them?
Yeah, no, my class at UCLA has 400 people in it, 400 students, and I give everybody an A. Day one, I say, you have your A. You can tell your parents you have an A. You've been lying your whole life to get that A every day and telling every teacher whatever you think they want to hear. I said, you have your A. Now let's deal with your education. And now don't tell me what I want to hear. And I make all the classes about not what I want to hear. Every assignment is, they have to write something from their 21-year-old self to their 41-year-old self to their 51-year-old self. I say, no, it's your life. It's not my life. You're living your life. You're not living your life to please me. You're the only person who has a standard of excellence for yourself. And excellence is not because somebody's pointing a gun at you and giving you a good grade. Excellence is because you're excellent. And you need to find your own excellence. That's not my excellence, it's your excellence. None of us are here to replace anybody else. Each one of us is totally unique. And nobody else can do what we're here to do. You have to find that. And that has to become really excellent. So when I'm working with an actress, if I say, oh, do this, and oh, do that, when she gets to that place in the performance, she'll say, oh, Peter told me to do this, okay. Whereas if I'm patient and let her discover something beautiful, then she can say, Peter, I discovered this. And I can say, oh, go try that. That's beautiful. And then every night in the performance, when she gets to that place is a deep moment in the performance because it's still a place of discovery. It's still a moment where somebody discovered something. And all we want to be with is in the presence of people discovering themselves, discovering the world, this moment of discovery where something opens. And so if I tell people what to do, then all I get is lots of closed moments. And if I don't tell people what to do, and if I'm just really patient, and I'm really patient with them and supporting them, they have discovery after discovery after discovery. And so for me, if I look at the stage at a show and see my own ideas on stage, it's a failure. Whereas if you look and you see everybody else's ideas, it's so rich, it's so beautiful. And nobody could have thought of any of that. That was only the product of people opening to each other and finding things they didn't know they were carrying. And so for me, this question of infinity, that we are infinite in our nature, we are all carrying all this stuff. You have to give people the space and the trust. And most people don't trust themselves. So they need somebody to trust them. And just say, no, I trust you. I actually trust you. And I have faith in you, that you're not going to lie. I have faith that you're going to do something worth doing. I really have faith in that. Most people, nobody ever had faith in that. And the minute you give somebody total trust and faith, and they can feel that it's real, it's not pretend, they can open into incredible place. So again, for me, it's never this top-down structure. It's always this structure of everybody's carrying with them the answer, and many answers. And what gives them permission to acknowledge that? and to value that. And we're, as always, we're in a society that values really valueless things. And meanwhile, the things that have real value, we assign no value to at all. And so it's just turning the value system upside down and say, what are the things that are important? Let's let them be important. And all the other stuff that is screaming at you how important it is, let's say it's not important. And just turning the world's gesture of importance upside down is really beautiful. And as always, the people in charge of huge governments and economies say, well, we're not sure what to do here. And believe me, those Congolese women trying to feed their family that I could tell you how to fix the world. They've had lots of time to think about it. They're right in the heart of it. And so it's also empowering a lot of people who've not been invited. And so most of my work is issuing the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no. No.
Unfortunately, our time is over.